General Introduction on Culture Media 1 Professor Mokhtar Kamara. Nutritional preparation made from biological or chemical substances. Nutrient requirements of the microorganism. Heavy checkmark cover the needs in mineral ions, growth factors, provide the source of carbon, and energy. Heavy checkmark have a pH close to the optimum pH, buffer systems. 2. Classification of culture media can be done according to their heavy checkmark composition, heavy checkmark function, heavy checkmark consistency. 3. Empirical media. Approximate composition, undefined components, peptones, meat extracts, yeast extracts, biological fluids. Heavy checkmark very rich in organic substances, allowing easy growth of many microorganisms. Heavy checkmark example, chocolate agar, trypticase soy agar. NB. Certain empirical media are enriched with biological fluid, blood, cooked blood, serum, milk, etc. 4. Synthetic media. Culture media made up of pure chemicals. Rigorously known qualitative and quantitative composition. Relatively poor growing media. Example, Simmons citrate, urea, indole, etc. 5. So-called basic or usual culture media heavy checkmark use as universal as possible. Heavy checkmark medium or cultivate a maximum of heterotrophic microorganisms having no particular nutritional requirements. Heavy checkmark a microorganism growing on this type of medium is called to be easy to grow or not fastidious. Heavy checkmark example, regular or nutrient agar or broth, trypticase soy broth. 6. Isolation culture media. Characteristics of the desired microorganism and are solid. Presence of agar at 15G/L equals sulfate polygalactoside. Extract of red algae, not degradable by most microorganisms. Liquid at over 45 degrees Celsius and solid at minus 45 degrees Celsius. 7. Isolation culture media. Base media, ordinary. Media enriched with biological products, for example, basic media plus blood. Fresh blood agar. Elective media, promoting the growth of one or a few bacterial species. Example, agar at pH 9. Selective media, one or more inhibitors for the microorganisms to be eliminated. Example, Chapman agar, NaCl. 8. Enrichment culture media. Liquid media. Allow the growth of one or more bacterial species in small quantities in a sample. 2 types of enrichment medium. Non-selective enrichment medium, the most used. Elective enrichment medium. 9. Enrichment culture media. Heavy checkmark non-selective enrichment medium, the most used. Heavy checkmark example, nutrient broth. Medium used for a large number of microorganisms. Oh, no special requirement. Oh, it consists of a mixture of tryptone, meat extract which contributes to the growth of microorganisms, and sodium chloride for maintaining osmotic pressure. Heavy checkmark elective enrichment medium heavy checkmark example, alkaline salted peptone water. Enrichment medium for Vibrio cholerae when this microorganism is present in small quantities. O. Vibrio spp. Will grow faster and in larger quantities than other microorganisms. 10. Type-off culture media. According to function, orientation, and identification media heavy check mark allow the demonstration of biochemical characters. Heavy check mark make up the identification gallery 11 standard Galeria, Kligler-Hodgna agar, API 20E Galeria. Type of culture media. According to function, conservation media heavy check mark media allow the survival of microorganisms using slowed metabolism. Heavy checkmark these are generally very poor backgrounds. 12. Liquid media. Broths. Media where microorganisms can develop perfectly. Solid culture media allows you to obtain isolated colonies. These solid media are poured into petri dishes or tubes with a high agar content, 15G/L. 13. Type of culture media. According to the consistency, semi-solid media heavy checkmark the amount of agar is 0.2 to 0.5%. Heavy checkmark they allow bacterial mobility. Heavy checkmark X, mannitol mobility medium, meat liver agar, Carey Blair. 14 mannitol motility medium, meat liver agar, Carey Blair medium. Type of culture media. According to the consistency, biphasic media heavy checkmark, they both understand heavy checkmark a solid medium and a liquid medium in the same vial. Heavy checkmark the inoculum is added to the liquid medium heavy checkmark X, castaneta medium for blood culture, trans-isolate medium for cerebrospinal fluid, 15 castaneta medium trans-isolate medium. Example of commonly used culture media, Mueller-Hinton agar. Composition. Beef infusion 300 milliliters per liter heavy checkmark casein peptone 17.5 G/L heavy checkmark cornstarch 1.5 G/L heavy checkmark agar 17 G/L. Interests. Kirby Bauer method. Reference agar for performing antibiogram using the allows the growth of many microorganisms. Concentration of Mg2+, Ca2+, thymine, thymidine, and its thickness for millimeters are standardized. 16. Example of commonly used culture media fresh and cooked blood agars. Adding blood to the mibase can have several purposes. Provide growth factors necessary for the microorganism studied. Neutralize certain inhibitors contained in the peptones of the media. Neutralize due to the peroxidase and catalase action of hemoglobin superoxide. Ions or toxic peroxides produced by the microorganism. Of particular interest for bacteria-negative catalase, such as Streptococcus. 17. Example of commonly used culture media fresh and cooked blood agars. Adding blood to the base medium can have several purposes. Heavy checkmark fresh blood agar, FBA, allows reading of an important trait in determining the germ, hemolysis. Heavy checkmark origin of blood, horse, rabbit, sheep heavy checkmark concentration, 5% blood in agar base, MH, Columbia, etc. Heavy checkmark agar base must not contain glucose as it inhibits hemolysis. 18 5% blood MH fresh agar 5% blood MH cooked agar. Example of commonly used culture media salt mannitol agar, Chapman. Composition heavy checkmark peptones 10G heavy checkmark meat extract 1G heavy checkmark sodium chloride 75G heavy checkmark mannitol 10G heavy checkmark phenol red 0.25G heavy checkmark agar 15G heavy checkmark distilled water QS 1000 milliliters 19. Example of commonly used culture media Salmonella Shigella agar composition. Heavy checkmark peptone 5 heavy checkmark beef meat extract 5 heavy checkmark ball salts 4.2 heavy checkmark sodium citrate 10 heavy checkmark sodium thiosulfate 8.5 heavy checkmark iron citrate 2 heavy checkmark lactose 10. Heavy checkmark brilliant green 0.0003 heavy checkmark neutral red 0.025 heavy checkmark agar 12 final pH equals 7.320. Example of commonly used culture media thiosulfate citrate bile salt sucrose TCBS agar composition. Heavy checkmark casein peptone 5 heavy checkmark meat peptone 5 heavy checkmark yeast extract 5 heavy checkmark sodium citrate 10 heavy checkmark sodium thiosulfate 10 heavy checkmark beef bile 5 heavy checkmark sodium cholate 3 heavy checkmark sucrose 20 heavy checkmark NaCl 10 heavy checkmark ferric citrate 1 heavy checkmark thymol blue 0.04 heavy checkmark bromothymol blue 0.04 heavy checkmark agar 14 pH equals 8.621. Example of commonly used culture media CLED, cystin lactose electrolyte deficient, agar composition. Heavy checkmark lactose, 10 heavy checkmark gelatin peptone, 4 heavy checkmark L-cysteine 0.128, heavy checkmark agar, 15 heavy checkmark casein peptone, 4 heavy checkmark beef extract, 3 heavy checkmark bromothymol blue 0.02 heavy checkmark pH 7.3 plus or minus 0.222. 23.